Hi, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to the Lafora Talk Show. This is season 3, episode 1. Oh my goodness, where does the time go? We already are in the first episode of the new year, and I want to welcome everybody today. My name is Tanya Friedman, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Kinetics USA. We help healthcare organizations all over the United States with the nursing shortage by bringing in internationally educated nurses. And I have with me today Chelsea. Hi, Chelsea. Welcome.
Good morning.
Morning. And we also have Tina. Hi, Tina. Welcome.
Good morning.
And then Chelsea and Tina are our experts, and we're going to hear a little bit about their background in a few minutes. Joining us today as well is Alma and Jake. Alma and Jake are 2 international nurses who have come recently to the United States. Welcome, Alma. Welcome, Jake.
Hi. Good morning.
Morning. Jake, you on mute.
Yeah. Good morning, ma'am. Hello.
Hi there. Welcome, everybody. And welcome to everybody who's joining us from all over the world. This is an interactive show, so if you have questions for the panel, please feel free to put those into the chat, and I'd be happy to share that with the panel and get the answers that you would like. Today's topic is a very, very important one, and that is culture shock. Most international nurses that want to come to the United States have that dream, have that thought sometimes from a young age that they want to come to America for greener pastures and for a better life, more money, being able to see family that live in the United States, being able to experience the American way of life, being valued as a nurse. Lots of reasons for coming to the United States. But the topic today is culture shock, because it's very common for nurses to experience culture shock when they first arrive here. This is something that people don't really talk about. So today we're going to be talking about the basics. What is culture shock? What is the definition? We're going to be talking about the timing, the different stages of culture shock, because there's actually well documented that there are different stages. We're going to be talking about the dangers if we don't address culture shock and what happens. And then we're going to be providing some tips and preparation of how to prepare so that if you come to the United States, you don't have the culture shock is not too bad, because everybody goes through it in a different way. Okay, so let's get started. I'd like the panel please to go ahead and introduce themselves. Please give a little bit of background about yourself and share with the viewers why you are on the panel to talk about culture shock. Let's start with Chelsea. Jake, I think there might be a little bit of noise interference. So when you're not speaking, maybe put yourself on mute and then feel free to jump in at any time. There we go. Go ahead, Chelsea.
Thanks. Good morning again, everyone. It's nice to see everyone. My name is Chelsea. I am currently a marriage and family therapist. I'm also a PsyD candidate right now for my doctorate. I have quite a bit of experience working with different folks, different individuals. I helped form a nonprofit in Boston that was individuals relocating from Haiti. And I've done a lot of work recently down in the border in Tijuana during the pandemic, kind of getting folks settled, getting individuals accustomed to life in the States and that transition. I specifically do a lot of trauma therapy. So oftentimes kind of the folks that maybe are coming with a little bit more crisis, but I have a lot of experience working with families and especially kids, getting them settled in the States.
Okay, so Chelsea's one of our experts, and we can't wait to hear her take on culture shock and how people can navigate that and hopefully not experience it too badly. Tina, do you want to go?
It's a big topic.
It's a big topic, yeah, and an important topic. Go ahead, Tina. It's something that people don't really talk about, so I think that's really the value of today's show. Tina, go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone.
Hi, I'm Tina. I worked for a healthcare facility out in the Midwest. We recruited quite a few nurses over there. So by the time I left, there were about 140 nurses and their families that had arrived. So I helped all of them through their steps of arriving, from picking them up to the airport to many levels afterward. So I was there for about 3 years doing that, and it was just absolutely lovely, but a lot of experiences that come with that as well.
Okay, so Tina's going to be able to offer a lot of insight from the outside perspective, from the facilities perspective, and having watched literally hundreds of people go through culture shock as nurses when they arrive at a hospital in the United States. Alma, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Alma. I am just 6 months here in the US. I came here with my husband and my two kids. My kids are 5 and 1, and I'm the only Filipino nurse in my area. And I'm pretty fresh here, 6 months. So the culture shock or the culture adjustment is still very much going on. And I'm very happy to share my experience of what we went through and we are still going through as a family for that.
Okay, thank you, Alma. And I think your experience is going to be really valuable because you are right kind of in the middle of it. And as we said, a lot of people don't talk about it. So thank you for being brave and courageous and sharing this with everybody who's watching. Because I think sometimes people kind of want to cover it up and don't want to talk about the culture shock that they're experiencing. So I really think it's wonderful that you are here to share that. Jake, what about you?
Good morning. My name is Jake. I arrived here last July, so I'm about 7 months only. So I still experience culture shock in different places in the hospitals or in the communities in general. So I can share with you some of my experience in the culture shock here in the US.
Thank you, Jake. And I see that we have a lot of nurses joining us from all over the world who are going to be really interested in everything we're going to cover today. I'm also really grateful to see Juan is tagging some of his friends. So Juan, thank you for doing that. The Lafora Talk Show is all about nurses helping nurses. This is what it is. And that's where we're so grateful to the Lafora admin team for giving us this opportunity. So shout out to Louise, to Jean, to Paul, to Anna, to Yanni for giving us this opportunity and being able to talk about this very important topic so that nurses can share their experience and also learn from the experts. We have a lot of nurses joining us. Mercy's joining from Nigeria, Mika from Singapore, Lai is saying hello. Princess is watching, Jeanette is watching, Junette is watching, lots of nurses watching from all over. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we'd love to share that with the panel. All right, so let's get started. So nurses dream of coming to America. That is, that's the ultimate. Alma and Jake, tell us about your dream. When did you first want to come to America? Alma, go ahead.
Okay. I took my NCLEX 2008. So that's how long I have been trying to get here. My family, especially my parents, were actually the one who encouraged me because of the opportunities that is very much available here in the US. So that's how long my journey has been trying to get to here in the US. And now I'm finally here.
Okay, so a long time coming. And also, I think probably, Alma, you want to make sure that you live up to what your parents were hoping for you.
Yes, there is some degree of that, but at the same time, along the way, my nursing journey was very colorful and interesting. But I have come to love and like and respect the profession very much on my entire 15 years of being a nurse.
Okay, so you clearly have that passion for nursing. Jake, what about you? Did you always want to come to America? Share a little bit about your story and your hopes and dreams. Jake? Can you hear us, Jake? Oh my goodness, oh, Jake is reconnecting. Okay, there you go, Jake. We've got two of you. We don't hear you, Jake. I don't know. Can anybody hear Jake? Because I don't hear him. Jake, we don't hear you. Do you want to maybe log off and reconnect again, Jake? Sorry about that. Okay, so lots of nurses joining us from all over the world. Mercy from Nigeria, Mika from Singapore, Chinenye from South Africa. Chinenye, I'm from South Africa too. I was an immigrant. I came here 21 years ago with my family, my husband and my 2 kids. My kids, Alma, you'll be interested to know, were 4 and 8, so not that different from your kids' ages when you came here. And I have certainly experienced culture shock, so I'll be able to share that. Christina, some of the Cox nurses are saying hi to you. So that's kind of fun. That is Jeanette and Jocelyn from Saudi, Margaret from, I want to come to the US. Margaret, we want you to come to the US too. Jake, do you want to share about your American dream?
Good. Can you hear me now, ma'am? Sorry, I
Yes,
lost earlier.
Yes,
My American dream started back in 2003 because I graduated back then at that year, and it's really a long journey since, um, you know, I encountered retrogression back then, 2007, 2008. So I shift to another option, which is the United Kingdom. I moved to the UK for 6 years. So I I didn't have much any idea if I can still pursue my American dream. But when I went home back in 2015, I heard that immigration in the U.S. are continually hiring nurses to migrate to the U.S. So that time, my American dream was already there again. So it took me maybe 10 to 15 years to come to the U.S. So it's a long journey, should I say? And it's been my dream to come to the US since I have so many friends, relatives, and even extended families who are based in California. So it's pretty much, this is really my second home, should I say?
Okay, so a long time, Jake, that you've wanted
Yes,
to
ma'am.
come here. And obviously during that time, you probably built up a lot of expectations of what that would be like.
Correct.
Yeah. Jean, hi, we've got Miss Jean who's joining us. Hi, Jean, welcome. Jean, can you hear us?
Good morning, everybody. Sorry, I came late.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Miss Jean needs no introduction to the Lafora group, as she is extremely well known. But for those of you who don't know Miss Jean, if you want to just give a quick introduction about your background.
Introduction. I'm Jean Oliver in Facebook, Jason Jimenez in the real life. So I came here in the USA since 2006. Been here for almost 16 years now, and I've been an admin in Lefora for I think for 4 years now.
Okay, so Jean is very famous in Lafora and on social media, helps many, many nurses, and I think will bring a very interesting perspective to the discussion because she went through culture shock, but it's a few years ago. So Jake and Alma are going through it right now, so I think it's interesting to have Jean's perspective. Okay, so we're going to start off with the basics. Chelsea, we've got a graphic which is basically what is culture shock. So if you want to just share with us just kind of like a definition of culture shock, and then what are some of the feelings, if you can talk us through this slide, what are some of the feelings that are associated with culture shock?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, in general, as you really touched on, it is a very normal experience thing. I want to say first, it is very expected and very normal. Culture shock in itself is a really broad term used to describe kind of what happens and what we go through, the feelings that we go through when we encounter an unfamiliar environment or unfamiliar settings. So this beautiful graphic shows a lot of those things. Of course, things like loss and homesickness. Probably, I know you mentioned we're going to talk a little bit about the stages. So a lot of that loss and homesickness can come up. Rejection can occur if we're feeling like, especially with children or younger individuals, if we're feeling as though we don't fit in, we can feel rejected. That can certainly lend into some of the helplessness on this graphic as well. You know, feeling othered by the society that we're entering can lead to a lot of stress as well. The confusion, certainly a very, very important piece to look at, how different customs occur, how things maybe look different than in our countries. Certainly something that can happen quite a bit with children as well.
Okay, so a bit of an emotional roller coaster. Alma, can you share with everybody who's watching today what are some of the feelings that you have experienced going through the last few months of being in the United States?
Oh, being new in a foreign country, culture shock gave me a sense of anxiety, and that's through a bit of confusion. And I guess that resulted from just being cut off from the familiar culture that I was in, the environment that I was used to. I would say the first 3 months was probably the most I felt it. Just not just me, including my husband. My kids are pretty young to feel it, but yes, the first 3 months was pretty much the peak of the culture shock, I would say.
Okay, so lots of those emotions that Chelsea's just described. Jake, what about you? What can you explain to us some of the feelings that you've experienced in terms of culture shock? I think Jake is having a Wi-Fi issue. Oh my goodness, poor Jake. Okay, Jean, do you want to maybe go ahead and talk about, I know it's a way back for you, but did you experience any of those feelings when you first came into the United States? You're on mute, Jean.
Yes, we surely had a culture shock when we came here in the US. So it's been a long time, like 2016. So when we arrived, I have my family with me, my daughter with me, who is 3 years old, and so there are times that we felt that, like, the racism, especially in Michigan. There's a lot of white people there, and it's not so accommodating. Some of the coworkers in the hospital are like, you don't feel that you're accepted. And but we have good friends who came in before us, so it's like a kapatiran in Michigan. So we have a group of Filipino nurses there, like 100 plus, before us. So it helped us to be accepted, like you feel at home too.
Okay, so having that community, it sounds like, was very helpful.
Yes.
In what way did they help you, Jean?
They will tell you how to work with the people, especially all the nurses in the hospital. Like, if you feel that you're being bullied or something like that, you have to fight for what is right, and you have to be assertive in everything that you do. So they will teach you how to mingle also with those nurses.
Okay, so just sometimes that interpersonal communication can
Yeah.
be very helpful, because I think for many international nurses, it's very typical to be taught to be shy, to be humble, not very assertive. Jake, can you talk a little bit about that and how that was a transition for you? Jake, you're on mute.
Hello?
Yeah, there we go.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Yeah. Sorry about. Actually, I just experienced a little stress when I came here because I already had experience working in the UK for a long time. So it's not too bad, should I say? But there are just some things that also I experience. Especially if you can feel like um, you are not in for the group. Like they would tell you, okay, can you work with this guy? Can you work with them? And you can see the person you're working with are foreigners. So you could tell that, oh, probably there's something wrong with this. And there's white people, they're just, working on their own friends as well. So I could say that, yeah, there's still racism in the areas. And I think it's just have to be strong, and you just have to deal with it when you're from foreign country, because you cannot eliminate these things. They're still there. So what I did, I was just very professional, and then just keep doing what I love to do as a nurse.
Yeah, so kind of putting one foot in front of the other and just continuing.
Yes, ma'am.
Jake brings up an interesting question. Tina, I know that you saw hundreds of nurses coming through to the United States, and you kind of saw them from the outside perspective. Did you notice a difference? Like, does everybody go through culture shock? Or do some people go through it in different ways, is one question. And also, do you find that there are certain symptoms or things to look out for from an outside perspective?
I think everyone goes through a different form of culture shock, just like everyone deals with things differently and they show it differently. You may not always recognize it in others. I think it's just a matter of how each individual deals with their emotions and how they feel. We certainly saw people with culture shock. I think a very important part was just how they handled it, and just knowing that you need to go and ask for help, or go find someone to talk to. If your hospital has a coordinator, that's what I was. Being there and always having my office door open to where they could come and talk to me. I think that's very important, especially when you're starting to feel any of that culture shock, or you have questions about why is this happening, or why are people saying things like this. Because not every hospital is going to be very diverse, as some of them said. So it's a matter of letting the people, your coworkers, your new coworkers, know what more about your culture. Teach them about you, where you come from, and let them know what it is that is so important to you, so that you can also do the same for them. You can learn where they came from. You can learn what they do, and then you can start making those bonds through those differences.
Yeah, I think that's very valuable advice, is to be able to find who you can talk to. So you said you had an open door policy, so people knew that they could come to you, or to have trust. And I think the hard thing, and Alma, you might be experiencing this because you're the only international nurse at the facility where you're working. How do you handle that if it's not like Jean said, she had a lot of people to call on, or Jake had, he had been through culture shock before. Tell us how you handled it as being the only international nurse in the hospital.
Okay, so when I first came, so we did an orientation with the HR, and I was the only international nurse. I was introduced to my preceptor, which I'm very thankful for, that she was really open-minded, and she was very curious of where I came from, what I was used to, what are the working environments I used to work in, so that we have like a leverage of where we would start. At the first, I would say 2 weeks, it was pretty overwhelming because I also work on the southern part of the states. So the accent of the people is very strong. And I thought that, oh, I have good IELTS score. I pretty much know English well. But once you hear the strong southern accent, that kind of like gets you off a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that I needed to get used to as well. And then make sure that you be proactive in knowing the policies, like the discriminatory policies of your hospital, and just be proactive and be respectful to all your colleagues. If you think that you're being stepped into, make sure that you know how to talk to people and be just be professional as possible.
Okay, so good advice there. There are a lot of symptoms that people from the outside can see when somebody's going through culture shock. Chelsea, we've got a graphic about the symptoms, the common symptoms of culture shock. Can you just talk us through some of these symptoms?
Sure, yeah. And as we kind of really thoughtfully mentioned, they're going to look different in everyone. And I think the role that expectation plays in this, we talked about this being a lot of folks' dream. And so it can be kind of hard to acknowledge when we have some of these feelings because there's so much excitement. So certainly being homesick, pretty self-explanatory, with such a big shift happening, missing the things that are comfortable and familiar is definitely, it may be uncomfortable, but very normal thing to expect. Sleep is going to be something that, for children and adults, if we're going through the anxiety, the stress during the day, getting used to perhaps even a new time zone as well, new work hours, disturbed sleep pattern. When we're stressed, sometimes that affects our sleep. Feeling remote or isolated, I think so important to also recognize these past couple years, not only culture shock, but culture shock in a pandemic. So not only are we getting used to a new place, we're getting used to a new place, and oftentimes that was locked down. So access to different communities, resources to connection and community is going to be really limited. all of those things can certainly lead to the decreased productivity, right? When we're dealing with the anxiety, the loneliness, feelings of isolation, that can absolutely affect our work. And as some different folks mentioned, kind of differences in language or in hospitals or where we're working, kind of getting caught up and up to speed on how different things work, while also balancing some of these, what can be really uncomfortable feelings can certainly lead to different things in our work. And the personality change, very interesting, to think about this one. We're kind of adopting in many ways a new culture completely, and that can definitely make us look at our identities. And we can kind of, some folks do, everyone responds really differently. So we've said this is a normal process, but we're all going to respond to it really differently. Some individuals might take it all on of different aspects of a new culture, whereas others might, pick and choose. And really, it's an opportunity to kind of look at our identities and maintain certain parts or kind of integrate new parts as well.
So everybody's going to go through it differently. I remember when I came to the United States, I think in the first few weeks and months, I really felt like I was operating in a fog, like I'd landed on another planet. Even though I'd been to America once before. Alma's smiling. I think you can probably relate. I felt like, first of all, I was scared of the Americans. I'd seen them in the movies, and Americans seemed so confident to me and so, just like in charge. And I felt so intimidated that I felt so scared to ask anybody anything, and everything just felt so confusing. I think it's helpful though for people to know that there is a timing, there is a different stages that nurses can go through. Tina, can you we've got a graphic of the different stages of culture shock. Can you maybe take us through the different stages, what you've seen people experience, these 5 different stages?
Oh, sure. So everyone is always so excited when they arrive. They're anxious, they're excited, they want to see the hospital. I remember many times driving to their permanent or to their temporary housing. They wanted to drive by the hospital so they could see it. So it's that excited stage, and just like most stages, with that honeymoon stage, you're just so excited and you're so happy. And then you start feeling the homesickness and that culture shock. So you start going through that negotiation stage where you're questioning whether or not you made the right decision. Was this the right decision for you? Was it? And if you came with your family, was it the right decision for your family? Because it is such a difference. And then you start adjusting and you're like, oh, maybe this isn't so bad. So there is a fine line right there between that negotiation to adjustment stage where you're trying to find your new home, your new permanent state, and then you start adapting, and that's when I've seen so many people flourish. I can say from the very first people that arrived, and seeing them that were still on friends on Facebook, and everyone afterwards, just seeing how much they've grown, to think that in just 3 years, they've gone through all these stages and now they have settled, they've bought houses, they've bought cars, obviously, and they're traveling the United States. I think most of them, have seen more of the US than I have, and I've been here all my life, but it's just an amazing thing and journey to see everyone go through it.
So, I have one nurse, at Kinetics USA, we always show nurses this graphic because I think it's kind of a good thing to keep in your head, especially when you're going through your worst time. And Chelsea, can you explain what that reentry shock is?
Sure. And I wanted to just mention one thing too as well about these stages. As I believe you mentioned earlier, this is very well studied. Something very important to note is that these are not always linear. And within families, they may also not be linear. They may not line up in terms of what one individual is going through and others. And that can not necessarily be a negative thing, but then sometimes we can kind of compare, especially if we're children, we have siblings of different ages. Oh, they're acclimating sooner, or we feel like we're heading towards that adjustment. And then say there's a big holiday in our home country or a big celebration, something maybe we miss. So we can regress a little bit, and that's also normal. It's not cause for concern that, oh no, we're going back to where we started. The re-entry shock looks like home feels different if we go home, if we're able to go back to our home country. having adapted to our new culture, then re-entering our old culture, we're different. We've adopted different parts of different cultures, or we've acclimated to a vastly different culture. And sometimes that can make home look different too, which can be shocking in itself, because that can put us kind of in between two cultures as well.
Like you feel like you don't really belong in either place 100%. You kind of belong in two different places. Alma, can you tell us a little bit about your honeymoon phase?
Oh, I would say it was short and sweet because, yes, before coming here to US, I was actually in the Middle East for 10 years. And it was during the pandemic that we came here last year. In the Middle East, they're pretty strict with the social distancing and wearing the masks. So we land in Chicago, and I see the Chicago skyline, and it's beautiful. And it's finally dawning on me that, oh, we're in America. Yay, we're here after like 14, 15 years of dreaming, setting, coming here. And then we land in the Chicago airport, crowded, and not everybody was wearing the mask. And we were like, me and my husband were like, are these safe? Kind of like that. So, but it's still, every now and then, there's still a sense of being overwhelmed and being happy that after all these years, we're finally here. So, yeah, there's still that feeling of being happy and being a mix of still adjusting to this different culture of different people. And like you said, Tanya, at first, I was very cautious of how I act because Americans tend to be very straightforward and frank, not to the extent of being disrespectful, but Filipinos tend to be timid. That's our culture. So that's something that I need to be getting used to, and just make sure that um, the people that you talk to mean well, and just keep in mind, make sure that you're not being stepped into.
Yeah, good advice, Alma. And those are such great memories when you think about that honeymoon phase, because I think for many nurses coming into the United States is you just want to like pinch yourself, like, are you really here after all these years? Jake, I know that you tried to come to America for a long, long time. What was the honeymoon phase like for you? You on mute, Jake, you on mute?
Sorry. Hi, ma'am. Yes, my honeymoon phase, well, it was started because actually before I came here, I had a spine surgery. So my American dream is, it's not, it's not a guarantee yet that I can be here. But then luckily my orthopedic surgeon was giving me a go signal that you can migrate, you can still work as a nurse. So that's why I decided to continue processing my application, because that time I put my application on hold after my surgery. I rested for 1 year, and after 1 year, yeah, I spoke to my physician, and then he said, "Okay, you can work, but with minimal restrictions." So at that time, pandemic all started back in the early 2020. So he said, okay, just be careful because there's no vaccine yet. So I went to the US unvaccinated. I took a risk, and the flight was even the longest flight that I had. It's like direct flight from Manila to New York, and that was 16 hours. So when I came here, I was really tired. I got a jet lag, and it took me 7 days to recover, fully recovered, because I get dizzy the first two couple of days, and I feel weird, and then all of a sudden, it's still unbelievable. My feeling was like I was really shocked. Well, am I really in the U.S.? Because I mean, it's really impossible that I will be here. Imagine I have spine surgery, and knowing that I was in the retrogression back then, 2008, and that waited me for like 10 to 15 years to come here. And because that time I still don't have an NCLEX, and I took the NCLEX only back in 2008 in November, and then luckily I passed. So that makes it like a catalyst for a change. So probably I said to myself that, all right, maybe I have opportunities now for the US. And then when I came here, I'm glad that my friends really supported me a lot, especially I had a classmate who lives in Albany. So she was the one who coordinated my transport from GFK to Albany. And imagine she waited me there for 3 to 4 hours at midnight. And then we arrived at Albany around 4 a.m. So that's really a sacrifice since, he utilized his free time just to wait for me there. And when I arrived in Albany, I was said, "Oh, it's similar to a place called Southampton in the United Kingdom." So I said to myself, "Oh, this is not too bad. I could remember some place in the UK." And I noticed also when I came here that you need to speak out, you need to be vocal, because if you don't be vocal, especially in the working place, they don't know what you're feeling, what you're thinking about. And as what my other Alma said, that Americans are very frank. Yes, they are, and they don't. They are very individualistic, should I say? During my initial weeks of orientation, my preceptor don't discourage me to ask the same questions at the same time or what. So she wanted me to be independent as fast as I can. That's what I noticed. So I think because of the shortage of staff as well in the hospital, so that makes me, shorten my orientation to even 5 days. So after 5 days, I was in the area already working. So it's very impossible not to ask questions because I'm new to the area. But these things happen. They even ask you the question. Don't ask me the question. Don't ask me that question. I'm asking you. So it's like that. So I was said, all right, okay, okay. So what I did, I just asked the other staff who are friendly to me or who can accommodate me to answer that question. Because if I ask my preceptor, then that's what's gonna happen. Then it's gonna be negative, negative to her or to him. So I experienced so many things as well on my first few months, especially in the cafeteria, since I am a rice person. So there goes one day I was craving for rice, and then they said, "We only have French fries and chicken." I said, "Oh my God, so it's gonna be like this every day." So that's what I'm doing it right now: chicken, the vegetables, and fries every day. And since I don't know how to cook, I tried to. I watch YouTube, but it doesn't taste good. So I was thinking I'm gonna waste my time and money. Might as just well buy some food in the cafeteria and just take out. I mean, I just bring it at home, and that's what happens to me. I tried to ask my friends to teach me how to cook, maybe just some few Filipino stuff, but still I didn't get the taste. It's really horrible. So I am into sandwiches right now. I get used to this
You've
stuff
changed,
because
changed the way that you eat, Jake.
yes, yes. No, no, no. Actually, I'm used to this back
Are
in
you
the
used
UK.
to it now? Okay.
Used to this back in the
Good.
UK days, but
Okay.
that was 5 years ago. When you're not used to it for a long time, so your body tends to adjust. So
Yeah.
my body is still craving for rice. So that's what happened as well.
And
And also,
and
and also, ma'am,
yeah, go ahead.
and and also I noticed here the Americans are very patriotic. That's what I noticed. I cannot see houses in the Philippines with flags, but when I arrived here, oh my God, it seems most of the houses have American flags. And I asked my classmates, are these people soldiers? Because I noticed why are their flags in their houses? So she was laughing. No, 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 they're not soldiers, but they're
They're
just
just
patriotic. That's why they have these
patriotic. Yeah.
flags in their houses. So it was
And
shocking for me at the same time.
And it's so
And
funny, Jake, because I think sometimes it's little things that can trigger
yes,
you, like not being able to get rice, or that you see flags and you don't understand, like, what's that, what is that all about?
yes,
Jean,
yes.
Jean, you've seen so many nurses come through to the United States. What have you seen some of the small things that can trigger people, that can make them feel homesick or feel culture shock? Or was there any that you experienced?
Mm, I think not really. I really don't. I don't know. like what Jake is saying, like for the rice thing. So I am also a rice people. So, but and yeah, I don't know how to cook, but I have a husband who knows how to cook, so he cooks everything. So for Jake, probably you can probably just buy the rice cooker because it's very easy to cook
There
the
you
rice.
go, Jake.
Yes. I had rice cooker. That's what I did, and then I just buy some foods in the cafeteria. That's what I do every day now.
And
Yeah.
you know what's so interesting about immigrants? As I said, I'm an immigrant. Is people try for years and years and years to come to America. When they land in America after a few weeks, all they want is a little bit of something from home. It's just
Yes,
such a
correct.
funny human nature, that the first thing that you want to do is find like your ethnic foods or something that you relate to. And after all these years of wanting to come to America, that's the first thing, well, not the first thing, but one of the big things that happens when you arrive here. We've got so many people watching from all over the world. So Go is watching from Saudi. Margaret wants to come to the United States. Margaret, now's the best time to come to the United States. There are visas available, lots of employers that are hiring right now. So now's the time to apply. Niza from Bahrain. Elle is from Oklahoma, so is probably already also experienced culture shock. Eileen from the Philippines. Tara from the Philippines. Margaret's a nurse for 28 years who registered for the OET. So Margaret, just for you to know, the US requires the IELTS or the TOEFL. They don't actually accept the OET for the visa screen. Janelle is so happy for you, Jake. So one of your friends, Janelle, is saying she's happy for you. Belandi is saying hi. Jennifer saying congrats. Chigentai, I hope I've said that right, he's from Zimbabwe. So lots of people from all over the world watching, which is so fun. And as Riza says, culture shock is everywhere, but it will help us to adapt and respond, fight or flight. So that's very interesting because Chelsea, this is a question for you. What are the dangers? What are the implications of culture shock? What can it lead to?
Sure. I noticed that comment earlier as well. And actually, taking that from a actual physiological perspective, high levels of stress, if the transition and the adaptation process is a lot of stress on the family, we can actually go into fight or flight when our nervous system, there's so much anxiety, it becomes dysregulated. And that can lead to a lot of the symptoms we talked about earlier: anxieties, depression, fatigue, irritability is one that absolutely happens. And so when, we spoke about how some of those feelings are normal earlier, and to say that they're normal, it doesn't mean they're comfortable, but they are, normalizing them can make it feel a little bit less kind of overwhelming. But if those things, if we don't have community, if we don't reach out, if we don't kind of start to begin to feel comfortable or to get the rice cooker and feel a little bit more at home, then we can get into a state where our nervous system is really dysregulated. And that's when this starts to become, potentially dangerous, potentially overwhelming, potentially going from being kind of some normal uncomfortable feelings to being something that we would have to be, pay more attention to. And especially in children, things like depression, things like anxiety, that is just a little outside of that kind of what is to be expected.
Yeah, so there's certain symptoms to be aware of and some warning signals as well. And as you said, everybody goes through culture shock differently. For example, when I came here 21 years ago, I went through culture shock, but I think I adapted a lot easier than my husband. And I always tell the story that my husband used to take his suitcases literally almost every week, put them on the bed and start packing. And he would say, I'm packing up. I'm going back to South Africa. I hate it here. I don't want to be here. His whole family was there. He really missed them. So we were a married couple, but we went through it differently. And he definitely was way more anxious and stressed. And, today he's the proudest American you'll ever find and loves it here. And this is, he feels the best country in the world. But he really did experience, a lot of very difficult times.
And Tanya, you bring up a really good point in that your husband could verbalize that, right? Because he was an adult. So for children, if we're looking for things, depending on their age, if they're not able to verbalize quite as much, then we're looking at things like temper tantrums or isolating or, different behaviors, and just being really mindful not to label these as bad behaviors or acting out, because some children, depending on their age, are unable to verbalize how stressful and how hard these transitions are. So just kind of remembering not to punish them, so to speak, or to connect with their teachers if there's problems at school, to kind of loop them into the conversation that this is not, a misbehaved child. They're adapting to something.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And Chelsea, and I don't know for the rest of the panel, do you think maybe when a child is older, it can be more difficult? I mean, obviously it depends on the child. Tina, did you see that? I know you've seen a lot of nurses coming through with different children at different ages.
Yes, I think the younger ones are more resilient. You can always turn it into a game that they're on this adventure, but the older kids are usually the ones that are affected more. So once you get into those 8, 9, 10 and older who've grown accustomed to their friends and things like that, those are the ones that tend to have a little bit of a harder time, especially when you hit the high school ages. They're trying to acclimate within their school, and just like you all were talking about, pressure and bullying, maybe even within your own workplace, they're facing that. Depending on the diversity of the area, they're facing that at the school. So I know that these days communication with teachers is so much easier. So making sure that you are communicating with the teacher, it is very common to do so. So being an advocate for your kids is the most important thing, to make sure that they're getting the resources that they need, because schools now have counselors and social workers and people there to help them through those adjustments. So.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for sharing that, because I know Tina's seen so many nurses that have come through with children of different ages, and it's really interesting to see how different people will adapt in different age groups. Riza has a question for Alma. Alma, did you see a difference of Middle Eastern culture shock and then Western culture shock?
Yes. When I first came to the Middle East, I was fresh from the Philippines. So that was a big shock for me, because not only was the culture very different, the language barrier was a big factor. In the Middle East, their primary language is Arabic. Some of them speak English, but it's not the main language of the land. So I had a big adjustment, just being able to talk to people there, and then just coming to US. I was thinking that, growing up in the Philippines, we have a lot of American culture imbibed in our culture, so it's probably not going to be that big. And I know and understand English, so it's probably gonna be easier, but it's not. It's in a different level of adjustment, I would say, because people talk to you different, they approach you different. So I would say there's mostly a big difference between the Middle East adjustment and the Western culture adjustment.
So having probably gone through a culture shock once makes you more resilient, but that doesn't mean to say the experience is going to be the same. Oh, I see we've lost Jake. And I think what happens with many nurses is that because they've waited such a long time to come to the United States, when they come to the United States and they experience culture shock, there's often a lot of shame. There's often a lot of not wanting to talk about it because it feels embarrassing and it feels uncomfortable. I love Oprah, and Oprah always talks about secrets make you sick. Chelsea, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a really wonderful point that you bring up. And I think it goes back to the beginning of the conversation when we talk about the expectation and how this is a dream for so long. And so sometimes when we then get here and we start to encounter some of these things, perhaps we want to push those feelings down because we are ashamed of them. We worked and fought for this for so long that then having those sensations come up can be uncomfortable. But processing it is really important. We have to feel it in order to move through it and remind ourselves that it may be uncomfortable, but it is normal. And that there are, probably it might look different for every other nurse or individual who's also an immigrant, but they probably have some sort of ability to resonate with your experience and validate your experience, and just reminding, ourselves and our communities that we're not alone.
Okay. So I think shame is something that's really important to speak about, because a lot of nurses feel, as you said, embarrassed and uncomfortable that they are feeling culture shock after all these years of trying to get here. Now all of a sudden you get here and you're miserable. So you just feel embarrassed to say that. Alma's smiling and nodding her head there. Jake, I know that you've experienced culture shock when you went to the UK. Was that different to coming to the United States, or was it kind of the same?
Actually, it's similar, but the only thing here, should I say, the difference here, it's this country is so big. So the only thing I notice here is, I mean, the transport system. You need to have a driver's license, and you need to have a car, because yeah, here the car is considered a necessity. In the UK, same with the Philippines. Um, you don't need a car there. You can survive if you don't have a car, because UK, their transport system is very good. We have a lot of trains, we have a lot of taxis and buses as well. Even if you live by the village, you still have buses running every hours, and we also have taxis. But where I am right now at the moment, I'm somewhere upstate in New York. There is no train station. There's no taxis, and we only have a bus running at every hour. So there's not quite a lot of transportation, and my location is far from where I live. If I walk from the hospital, it would take like 30 to 40 minutes walk. So I would say the car here is the vital, and it's necessity. And with regards to the attitudes of the English and American, they are similar, because I would say that this country is a British colony before, so I think they got their culture way back then, long time ago. So it's just that there are some words that are different in the UK. For instance, if we call garbage in the UK as no, garbage here, and we call it in the UK as bin.
Yeah.
So we call the lift as elevator here, so that's lift in the UK, and we call trousers in the UK as pants or jeans here. So I mean, you can understand, but it's just a different word, what how they're using it.
Yeah.
So I was just amazed of how this English words get into this, different different countries, how they're trying to use it. Probably in Australia you have different, Montana you have different words as well.
Well, interesting enough. So I'm from South Africa, and South Africa was a British colony. So
Yes.
a lot of those words that you experience in the UK are the same in South Africa. So we would talk about the boot and not the trunk, and the cupboard, not the closet. I mean, I remember having one conversation when I first arrived here with a landlord for about 30 minutes, and I was trying to explain to him about, I kept using the word cupboard because that's what we would use in South Africa, and he was wanting, I should have said closet, and we misunderstood each other, and it was a very frustrating conversation for both of us for a very long time. So you bring up a good point here, Jake, and that is, how can people prepare to come to the United States? So whether it's learning the American colloquialisms or getting a driver's license, Jean, what are some of the practical things that people can try and prepare before they get here so that the culture shock is not so severe?
I think it's good to watch American movies. So by that, you can see how the Americans live here, the way of life, and you can compare that to how we live in the Philippines. So in that way, you would know how to go along or to live here like peacefully or whatever. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a very good one, is to watch American movies, because that definitely is very, very helpful for you to just kind of learn the culture. Alma, what are some of the other things that nurses can do to prepare practically before they arrive here that you wish you'd known before?
Oh, okay. This is what I did actually. I'm a very visual person. So, coming from the Middle East, which was, I was in the middle of the city full of buildings and public transportation. The town that I'm in now, it's a small town. There's no public transportation. You need to drive. So I utilize Google Maps and Google Street View just to have an idea of how the whole place would look like, because even the geographics of a place would affect you, I would say. And also read up about the weather. I'm in Oklahoma, and the weather changes here every hour or even minutes. And I was in the Middle East for 10 years. It's just sunny and no clouds most of the time. So read out about it. And also, I always tell the nurses who asks me and like sends me messages and questions, what do you do to prepare when coming here? Make sure, like I said, with the Google Maps, I make sure that the hospital I'm working in, if I could see like nearby apartments, because driving was a very big factor for me. I didn't drive before coming here in the US. I probably drove in the Middle East for 3 or 6 months only. So that was a big adjustment for me, and that made me anxious the most. It's a good thing that my husband just keeps on encouraging me that you can do it, because this is just how America is. Driving, like Jake said, is a necessity here. It's not a luxury, because in the Philippines, it's mostly a luxury, but here it's needed. So that's one thing that I would say: utilize Google Maps and Street View just to have you have an idea of what the place would look like. Read about the culture and what are like the food available. If you're very much into food like Jake and me as well, search about if like Asian food stores that are available in the area, if that would make you comfortable. They make you feel like a sense of home away from home. um Mostly that's it. That's the things that helped me cope for the first 3 or 4 months being here.
Well, those are very valuable tips, and things that maybe people didn't think of before, but really very much to do your research before. The one thing I think it was Chelsea or Christina, or maybe both of you said, is not to isolate yourself, to reach out to other people. So if you're like Alma and you're the first nurse who's going to a place where there aren't other international nurses, is to try and find people. I mean, that's where, this is a virtual event where we're sharing information. There's so many virtual ways that you can reach out and try and find other people that are in that area. Tina, one of the biggest issues that a lot of nurses experience when they come to the United States that maybe they can prepare a little better for is on the financial side, is not coming with enough money. You've seen so many nurses come through to the United States. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So there are so many expenses that you probably don't even think about when you first come over. It is very important to save up money, just so that you can feel comfortable when you get into an apartment. You're going to have to buy some furniture. You're eventually going to want to buy a car, and you're going to want to put some money down with that so that you're not taking out a full loan. And it just depends on the situation and what you want to get into. But it is very important to prepare financially, save up. That's not meant to say that you need to spend it all when you get here. It's to have it on reserve for when you need to get stuff. So being frugal at the beginning, and getting the necessities is what your first focus should be. Again, learn how to drive. That is very important. If you don't know how to drive and you don't get a chance to learn beforehand, do what Alma said and Google the area, look at where you're going to be staying, maybe buy a bike until you can get to where you go. But again, depending on where you're at, I'm sure like Oklahoma, it's pretty cold right now. So you don't want to worry about that stuff. So maybe do your research on what plugs are needed. All of those things are going to help make it easier into your transition. Alma, you do not know what big shoes you stepped into being the first nurse to come over, but so many people are going to be reliant on you, and you're going to be an amazing resource for them as well. So I'm excited to see where your journey takes you on that aspect.
You're so right.
You. Yeah.
You're so right, Tina. And you're being a resource for people right now. So thank you to everybody who's on the panel, because I'm just looking at the comments. I wish I could, read out everybody's comments, but there's such interesting comments and fun comments of people joining in, and just sharing your stories is just so helpful for everybody who's watching. I can't believe we are at the hour. This was a really interesting conversation. Jean, I'd love you to share with everybody a little bit about what you're seeing happening in the hospitals right now, because coming to the United States, at the best of times can be stressful and people can experience culture shock, but coming during a pandemic can be even more stressful because it colors the whole process and adds a whole nother layer of complexity to an already complex situation. And many of the hospitals and healthcare facilities in the United States right now are short of staff. This is not just one facility. Almost every hospital or nursing home or rehab facility is short of staff right now. They don't have the time, they don't have the bandwidth that they would normally have at any and I say normal time, not a time not being in the pandemic, which makes culture shock more difficult. Jean, can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing in the hospitals right now?
So right now, I think the COVID cases are minimized already. Like there's not a lot of cases, but during the peak season, like March of 2021, there are a lot. We really have a lot of cases. So when you come here right now, I hope you already have the vaccines, the two doses of the vaccines, either Pfizer or the Sinovac. I think it is fine to have, but at least you are already vaccinated. So some of the hospitals right now won't even hire you if you are not vaccinated. So you have to be vaccinated, and then so the cases of Omicron. COVID right now is, I think we have a lot of cases also, but not as much as when last year's COVID cases. But I see a lot. I see maybe in a night, 10 or 20 cases of Omicron cases of COVID right now. So it is very important also that you need to learn. You have to use proper like hand washing or the PPE, especially if you will be working in the COVID area. So right now the staffing issues, there are a lot of hospitals who are hiring agency nurses. So most of the nurses who are enticed to be like they went into travel nursing because travel nursing offers them a big salary, like 9,000 in a week. So most of the hospitals are short staffed, and probably you will be experiencing that you will be taking care of like 5 to 6 to 7 patients in one nurse ratio if the hospitals are so short staffed. So maybe you have to deal with that for quite some time now.
Yeah, it's not an easy time right now. We're hopeful that things are going to improve, but the hospitals, I mean, I've been doing this for 15 years. The hospitals are more under stress now than they have ever been. And that means that culture shock it might be a little bit even more difficult for many nurses because a lot of the hospitals don't have the time or the bandwidth to give as much help as they would like to international nurses who've got that bridge training that's going to be needed. We have a graphic about just tips to prevent culture shock. Chelsea, do you want to maybe take us through those tips?
Sure. Yeah. Another great graphic. So, we've spoken about this quite a bit. So understanding that this is common, a normal experience. We feel less overwhelmed by that. Accepting not only the differences, but also kind of like we touched on a little bit earlier, accepting that there is a transition period, allowing ourselves to feel that, and especially, acknowledge those feelings in our family members and children if we have them. Being open-minded, certainly very important. Things are going to look really different, and different can be uncomfortable sometimes, but it's not necessarily always bad. So keeping an open mind, positive attitude is going to take us a long way. Not to say we want to be, toxically positive. We want to hold space for the tough times, but also keeping that open mind, staying positive, focus on positive aspects rather than negative aspects. Staying in touch with home is so important. So, keeping in contact with friends and family, For kids, maybe even younger kids, setting up even something like setting their room up in the same way as home, or different items, transitional items, can be really, really helpful for younger kids to keep a sense of stability, a sense of kind of like continuity from home. And finding gratitude in daily life. As a therapist, I tell all my clients to have gratitude journals that can sometimes at first feel a little bit silly, but it's just taking those moments either independently or as a family. At the end of the day, you can still acknowledge maybe the tough moments, but take a few minutes. You can make a gratitude jar. It can be fun with kids. So you can decorate it, and then everyone, colorful pieces of paper, write down one or two things, every day that we feel grateful for in the new area.
Well, we are grateful for this conversation. And in fact, at Kinetics, we actually give our nurses a gratitude journal when they arrive. This is something that just helped me personally, because I think when you are expressing gratitude, it just puts your headspace in a much more positive frame of light, and it just helps you to see the blessings. So even though you're going through that dip, even though you're going through that culture shock, you know that there's hope, there's a road at the end of it, and everybody will get through it. So it kind of puts it in perspective. Well, we are out of time. This was such a fun conversation. I think it's a really important conversation. So I want to thank the panel that have shared their experiences and their pointers and their tips and their observations for all the nurses who've been watching. I tried to get through as many questions as I could from the chat. So if there are any other questions, I will definitely, our team will try and get through those questions and make sure to answer where we weren't able to get to you. And just to share, to finish off some Kinetics initiatives, because I know that some nurses have asked how to apply. So one thing is, if you apply to Kinetics, you have a free review course on your IELTS. We've had enormous success with this. You can watch our IELTS hero interviews, and I always reference Bert. He's one of the Kinetics nurses. He took the IELTS 7 times. He failed. He came to Kinetics and did our course, and he passed on the 8th try. You can watch his video and see him sharing his story. We have an NCLEX scholarship, which is a free review course for selected global nurses. We also have a $1,000 referral fee. We have nurses who have, if you refer us a nurse with NCLEX, this is a promotion which is being extended until January 31st. So it's a way for you to help your friends and colleagues, but also to earn yourself some extra money. Please join us and listen to our podcast. We are in the top 10% of podcasts in the world. It's called Nursing in America and shares stories about nurses. We also have, I see there were some questions about nurse aides. Yes, we have a direct hire nurse aide program. Please watch our show every Friday, Onwards and Upwards, on the Kinetics page. We have free information for nurses coming to the United States, and we also have positions for allied needs. So with that, we're going to finish off today. I want to thank again the Lafora admin team, Miss Jean, Paul, Louise, and Anna for giving us this opportunity. Thank everybody who's watching around the world. And we are excited for you to come to America. And now, if you do experience culture shock, you will know all about it and know how to overcome it. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.